Let's not stand up here and act like Democrats are the need.
I've not done
Joe
that.
Biden is the
I've not
need.
done that.
Carter Page and all of that. Let's not stand up here and act like that's the reason why we need
I would just remind them I have not done that.
And that's all that we have up here among these
you're the one who's
witnesses. Among the three Republican
partisan, not
witnesses
me.
are Carter
Time of the
Page
gentleman has expired,
aficionados.
and we will recognize the gentleman from California for 5 minutes. Okay. All right. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't view this committee meeting as the most serious effort when it comes to FISA reform, because if it was, we would have someone from the intelligence community sitting on this panel to give that viewpoint. Now, it's clear that this committee also is not interested in protecting the security, the personal, private security, and the data of American citizens. And that's because it was complicit when this president set up DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and put it in the hands of Elon Musk, and then unleashed Elon Musk to collect the private data of citizens through capturing the data of the Social Security Administration, the Treasury Department, the Office of Personnel Management, Health and Human Services, the VA, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, the Department of Labor, the Department of Transportation, and others, collecting this data. And the goal was to create a single centralized government database. And this effort was unprecedented and unauthorized by Congress. And while it was happening, this committee, as it does today, stood silent and complicit and let it happen and is not concerned about it. I'm concerned about that data. I'm wondering, Ms. Gotine, if you are, as it relates to Section 702.
I'm very concerned about what you're talking about. And in fact, I think I was speaking about it earlier when we were talking about sort of removing the quote unquote silos. I think that the access to data, private, sensitive data of Americans that is collected by the government on occasion for legitimate reasons, and then maybe sometimes for less legitimate reasons when the government is simply buying up massive databases, making that data widely available to anyone in government is a major privacy and civil liberties issue.
And this committee has not been interested in that. Let me ask a question. The Fourth Amendment, which requires probable cause to conduct a search, also has exceptions to it, such as stop and frisk, such as evidence in plain view, such as search incident to a lawful arrest, such as exigent circumstances. Am I right? That's for people on the street, though, regular people, but people in the suites. Before I say that, I'll note that on February 20th of this year, Trump issued an executive order forbidding the federal government, the DOJ, the SEC, and others from applying or investigating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And you all know that that's true. They're not enforcing that. And at this point, international crime perpetrated by American citizens, Trump in the lead with the acceptance of a $400 million jet. He just the other day accepted a peace prize from FIFA, and then the next day they announced that an indictment of FIFA is withdrawn, is being dismissed. Corruption, pay to play, is what's happening under this administration. Let me ask this question. Why shouldn't there be an exception to the warrant requirement in a situation where an FBI agent has a reasonable suspicion that a U.S. person should be queried because that FBI agent has evidence that that U.S. person is engaged in an international conspiracy to commit a mass murder of Americans, and that FBI agent wants to query the 702 database. Why shouldn't there be an exception to the warrant requirement that allows that FBI agent to do that? And by the way, I should say that the FBI under Kash Patel and the DOJ under Pam Bondi, I don't have any confidence that they would apply the law justly, that they would act in a legal fashion. I'm afraid of what they will do. It implicates how I'm going to vote this time when it comes to this reauthorization of FISA. If someone could answer that question, why shouldn't there be a exception to the warrant requirement?
Well, certainly if there was an immediate threat and a risk of life or safety, there would be an exception. That's for exigent circumstances. If not, if there's time for the FBI to use its usual investigative techniques, the ones that are less intrusive, that don't infringe on a reasonable expectation of privacy under the Fourth Amendment, they would have time. You said they have had evidence. Maybe they have enough evidence already to get a warrant. If not, they have other investigative techniques at their disposal that are less intrusive.
Well, they're sure going to have a whole bunch more material to work with also after this Doge situation has unfolded. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I would just point out that we had those exceptions in the language. In fact, I would think many of us thought we almost had too broad of an exception language in there for imminent threat, for a cybersecurity situation if the person gave permission. So we had that in the language. It was as we were being as generous as you could possibly be, I thought. So
well, I tell you, I'm going to be looking at it through a different set of eyes now that this Trump administration is in place.
Just, as long as you're a yes vote, we don't care how you get there.
Well, let's not stand up here and act like Democrats are the need.
I've not done
Joe
that.
Biden is the need. Carter Page and all of that. Let's not stand up here and act like that's the reason why we need
I would just remind you, I have not done that.
And that's all that we have up here among these witnesses. Among the three Republican witnesses are Carter
Time of the
Page
gentleman has expired,
aficionados.
and we will recognize the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
What unfolded in this hearing wasn't just a disagreement over surveillance law. It was a revealing moment about priorities, accountability, and hypocrisy. Representative Hank Johnson came to the table raising serious concerns about FISA reform, and instead of addressing those concerns honestly, Republicans tried to shift blame, rewrite history, and pretend Democrats were responsible for abuses they themselves enabled. Johnson began by calling out the obvious. If this committee were truly serious about reforming FISA, there would be intelligence community officials present to explain how these powers are actually used. Their absence speaks volumes. This wasn't a good faith effort to protect Americans' privacy. It was political theater. Johnson then highlighted a far more immediate and dangerous threat to civil liberties, one that Republicans have ignored entirely. Under the Trump administration, an unprecedented data collection effort was unleashed through the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, placing massive troves of Americans' personal data into the hands of Elon Musk without congressional authorization. Data from Social Security, Treasury, Veterans Affairs, Health and Human Services, Education, Labor, and more, all quietly vacuumed up while this committee said nothing. That silence matters, because Republicans who now claim to be defenders of privacy were perfectly fine with centralized data collection when it served their political allies. Johnson made clear that the real civil liberties crisis is not hypothetical. It's already happening. The buying, pooling, and sharing of Americans' sensitive data across government agencies is a Fourth Amendment issue, and this committee has consistently refused to confront it. When the discussion turned to Section 702 and warrants, Johnson asked a fair and serious question. If there is credible evidence that a U.S. person is involved in an international conspiracy to commit mass violence, shouldn't there be narrowly defined exceptions for exigent circumstances? The answer, as the witness correctly explained, is that those exceptions already exist. Immediate threats allow action. Beyond that, the Constitution still matters. If there is time, investigators must use less intrusive tools or obtain a warrant. That is not weakness. That is the rule of law. Johnson's concern wasn't about enabling crime. It was about trust, and trust is exactly what this administration has destroyed. He pointed out that Trump has ordered agencies not to enforce anti-corruption laws, accepted lavish foreign gifts, and presided over a pay-to-play culture where accountability disappears for the powerful. Under an FBI and DOJ leadership handpicked for loyalty rather than independence, blind trust in surveillance powers is dangerous. That context matters. Republicans like Jim Jordan tried to flip the narrative, accusing Democrats of past abuses, invoking Carter Page, and pretending Democrats caused the very problems Republicans refuse to fix. Johnson shut that down directly. "I have not done that." And he was right. Democrats were not the ones who stood silent while private data was centralized. Democrats were not the ones who weakened enforcement against corruption. Democrats were not the ones turning intelligence tools into political weapons. This exchange exposed the truth. Republicans want expansive power when they control it, and performative outrage when they don't. Hank Johnson's message was simple and principled. Civil liberties do not depend on who's in power. The Constitution doesn't pause for partisan convenience, and surveillance authority must be restrained, transparent, and accountable, especially under an administration that has already shown contempt for the law. That's not obstruction. That's responsibility. And that's why this debate matters.